At all is Kentucky Congressman James Comer. He is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Mr. Chairman, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
I want to get to the testimony of Tony Bobulinski, but first let's get to some breaking news that you have. I know that you were sending out subpoenas this morning. Tell me who you're subpoenaing and why.
We're subpoenaing several credit card companies. Through the interviews and depositions we've conducted thus far, we've learned that there were several credit cards that were used by various members of the Biden family. We believe for personal expenses, and we believe that these credit cards were being paid by CEFC or through CEFC-funded affiliates. So this is something obviously we need to investigate, and it's something that today we finally took the steps to issue the subpoenas.
So are you saying that the schemes involved using credit cards that they were spending money and China was paying for the bills? Is that one way that they were being paid?
Well, we know that there was a pretty extensive money laundering scheme. We know that they used a complex series of transactions through what I consider shell companies. A shell company, as your viewers know full well, is a company with no assets or no known purpose. And this was a complex way to try to deceive the IRS and to operate in the shady manner that they operated. One of the things that you'll notice on all of the bank statements is a lot of payments to credit cards, and they were various credit cards. Somebody said, well, just subpoena their credit card company. I mean, Maria, they had dozens of credit cards and dozens of bank accounts. But what we've been able to narrow it down to is some specific credit cards that were used by various members of the Biden family. So we've taken all the steps necessary to be to the point today where we're issuing a subpoena that will win in court. Remember, we're subpoenaing very sensitive information, very personal information from the Biden family. At the beginning of this investigation, nobody thought we would ever be able to obtain that information, but we've done everything the right way, and we're winning. We're in a position to where we can win in court, and I believe that we'll be able to obtain that credit card information.
So in terms of these credit card companies, are you subpoenaing companies like Visa, MasterCard, or the major banks like Bank of America, JP Morgan? Can you give us some clarity on who you are sending subpoenas to?
They would be major credit card companies like American Express.
American Express.
Companies like that.
Got
yes.
it. All right. American Express. So you sent the subpoena to American Express this morning?
Yes.
Let me get your take on what you learned yesterday from Tony Bobulinski, because Bobulinski's lawyer is going after Oversight Committee ranking member Jamie Raskin today for calling Bobulinski a political pawn. Mr. Chairman, we're hearing from the lawyer who writes this: Mr. Bobulinski has the facts and the receipts, and no amount of character assassination will change that. Your thoughts?
Well, Jamie Raskin continues to be dishonest with the American people, and Tony Bobulinski's not happy about it. And I don't blame Bobulinski, and his lawyer should issue a letter. As quick as we can get everyone to approve the transcript, we'll release the transcript, and Tony Bobulinski will be vindicated, and once again, Jamie Raskins will be proven to be a liar. I mean, Jamie Raskins has lied so many times about the evidence and about the testimony from people that we've brought in. I've lost count. So obviously Tony Bobulinski's upset. He should be upset. You know, he's the one honest, credible guy that was involved with the Bidens. He was so honest and so credible, Hunter defrauded him because he didn't want to be in business with a guy like Tony Bobulinski. He wanted to be in business with people that would allow them to continue to commit financial crimes and operate with our adversaries around the world. And Tony Bobulinski, at the end of the day, did not want to do that. So Tony Bobulinski's the one good guy in all of this. He did a great job under duress from the Democrats on the Oversight Committee. I've never seen people behave worse than Jamie Raskins and Dan Goldman did in trying to intimidate Tony Bobulinski, but they didn't. Tony Bobulinski provided very good, solid, credible evidence, and our investigation continues to move forward.
You know, I mean, when we all look at this together, no matter what side you're on, obviously if the commander-in-chief is taking money or has taken money from foreign adversaries, that immediately becomes a national security threat. I don't understand why you and your colleagues would not see this the same way. Why would Dan Goldman and Jamie Raskin try to knock down information that actually relates to the national security Security of America?
That's a great question, Maria. I mean, I don't think my constituents would tolerate public corruption. I don't think my constituents want our president to be on the take, for our president to allow his family to peddle his office to our enemies around the world. But yet, Jamie Raskins and Dan Goldman continue to defend the indefensible. They continue to serve as de facto Biden legal team attorneys. And it's counter to everything that Congress should be about. I mean, you go back to the Watergate hearings. You had bipartisan cooperation among Republicans and Democrats questioning Richard Nixon and his administration about different accusations. This investigation has been totally different. Not only has one Democrat never asked a substantive question about anyone involved in the Biden schemes, they continue to defend, and even further, they try to intimidate, and then they walk out to their friends in the mainstream media behind me here and spread disinformation. I mean, it's very clear the Bidens were influence peddling. You know, what they're trying to say is, well, Joe Biden didn't know anything about it. Kind of like the Her report, where Joe Biden it continues to lie and play the dementia card and everything else. At the end of the day, what we've learned from Tony Bobulinski, from Rob Walker, from Devin Archer, is Joe Biden was the central figure. He is what the Bidens were selling. He is how the Bidens took in tens of millions of dollars from our enemies around the world. And I think most Americans are not happy with that.
Well, I mean, it's very discouraging and disappointing to see elected officials try to water this down and not acknowledge if, in fact, the Biden family has accepted millions of dollars from our adversaries. I mean, just like the poster child of 2016, which was Adam Schiff, who was running around with hair on fire, Russia, 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 Trump colluded with Russia, and it's in plain sight. I think the American people are sick and tired of elected officials playing politics with something so important as the national security of America. And, you know, you say you're sending these subpoenas out to credit card companies. Are they going to respond? Will you actually get the data that you're looking for? Because I know you had a hard time getting the bank records initially from, you know, Bank of America and JP Morgan or whatever the other banks you were. But you did get those bank records. Ultimately, they did send you the bank records, right? So you think American Express is going to send you these records?
Well, we're going to find out. Remember, when I issue a subpoena, Jamie Raskins gets a copy of that, the ranking member. He's, you know, runs to Abby Lowell. He runs to the White House. He shows them the subpoena. The White House will immediately call the financial institution or the individual being subpoenaed and threaten them and try to obstruct and encourage them to not cooperate with our investigation. We have evidence of the White House doing that with witnesses we've tried to bring in for interviews. They discourage them from coming in.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll see if these financial companies will continue to work with us. I mean, what they do in the beginning, when they get a call threatening or encouraging them not to work with us, they meet with their legal team and they finally figure out that we have created a path here to win in court. So we're going to get those financial records one way or another, but like everything else in our investigation, Maria, it takes a long time because we are obstructed by the Biden legal team, by the White House, by the Department of Justice, and the list goes on and on.
Just extraordinary. You've also threatened to subpoena the Justice Department if they do not hand over the full transcript of President Biden's interview with Robert Hur. By February 19th is the date you put in place. You're asking for the full access to the documents that Biden was willfully holding on to. Have you heard back from the Department of Justice on this? Do you expect to get that transcript?
We'll get those transcripts just like we've gotten everything else, but it's going to be a battle because what we're interested in isn't necessarily where Hur talked about Joe Biden's mental state. I mean, we all see Joe Biden's mental state play out on a daily basis. Our concern is those documents, specifically the documents he mishandled from countries like Ukraine and China, countries where the Bidens have taken in tens of millions of dollars. We need to know, were those documents used as a central part of the Biden influence peddling scheme? Were these documents that Hunter Biden was taking and sending and handing over to our enemies around the world in return for payment? Because we believe there's a chance that in fact happened. If you look at the emails on the laptop, Hunter Biden sent some suspicious emails especially to Ukraine, that look like government documents that meet the criteria of what would be considered a classified document. So this is why we're concerned about receiving the transcripts and the video. It isn't about the president's mental state. We know what the president's mental state is. It's about which documents that Joe Biden used with respect to China and Ukraine, those documents that were classified.
Well, could he have shared those classified documents and gotten paid for it?
Well, there's a scenario where we think that's a possibility, especially with Ukraine. That's why we need those transcripts. It's a central part of evidence in our investigation.
And Mr. Chairman, if they're accepting all of this money, the Biden family, from China, Ukraine, and other adversaries across the world, would that money be on their tax returns? I know that you're also looking to investigate the IRS over its, quote, lenient treatment for liberal groups. Tell me about the IRS and how it's involved in this influence peddling scheme, if that's what it is, or was everything under a loan so that they didn't even have to report it to the IRS and on their tax returns? And what about these liberal groups?
Yeah. With respect to the taxes owed, the majority of the money that Hunter Biden and we believe Jim Biden, but we'll know more about Jim Biden in a week. The majority of the money that Hunter Biden received through the adversarial suspicious transfers from countries to the shell companies, he didn't pay a penny of taxes on them. The taxes that he owes are based on income from Burisma. So he still owes millions and millions of dollars on the influence peddling scheme money. Then you take, after the IRS went in and were investigating the Bidens for money laundering, for tax evasion, they were told to stand down. We know this from the IRS whistleblowers Shapley and Ziegler. From that point on, they changed the way they were taking money in. Now they started taking money in and claiming it as a loan, because you don't even have to report a loan to the IRS. Now, if you get a loan and you never pay it back, then that's income. So I could make a strong argument on your show today that just the president's son and brother owe millions and millions of dollars to the IRS from the money they took in from the influence peddling schemes, where they disguised it as loans and where they wrote off expenses from their shell companies. So this is a problem. This is a big part of our investigation. And then you look at Joe Biden. He took in $250,000. He made $250,000 from the influence peddling scheme. There's no question about that. He never paid taxes on that. So we've got a lot of tax evasion concerns in this investigation, and we're trying to track it all down.
Congressman, real quick before you go, we were having a debate yesterday on where the smoking gun is in terms of Joe Biden's involvement in his family's influence peddling. And I wonder what you view as the smoking gun. Is it the $40,000 that went directly to Joe Biden, and that would be 10% of the overall $400,000 that came from China, or is it something else? What is your smoking gun that proves Joe Biden was involved?
Well, first of all, we've tracked those two payments. $250,000 Joe Biden received directly from the family influence peddling scheme. There's no question about that. We've traced the money, and we have the bank memorandums to prove how that money went from the influence peddling schemes to Joe Biden's back pocket. But you look at all of this and all the money that his family took in, and it's a clear violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. That's clearly defined in the legislation as what constitutes a bribe, and a bribe to family members is certainly essentially a bribe to the politician. So that's one of the violations. You've got FARA violations, Foreign Agents Registration Act. So I think you're going to see at the conclusion of this investigation, when we issue the report, there were a lot of crimes committed by many members of the Biden family, including Joe Biden.
When are you expecting to issue the report?
Well, we've got to depose Hunter Biden on February 28th, then we'll have a public hearing, and hopefully we'll be starting on that report after that.
Congressman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, we're watching your work. We appreciate your time. James Comer joining us in D.C. We'll be right back.